He was a man who controlled boardrooms, made decisions that shifted markets, and never missed a flight. But on this ordinary Wednesday, at gate 17 of a busy airport, something stopped him cold. A little girl, barefoot, with tear-streaked cheeks, sat cross-legged on the cold tile floor, her arms wrapped around a ragged teddy bear. No parents in sight. No suitcase. No shoes. Just silence, and sadness. For a man used to million-dollar deals and polished conversations, it was a moment that shattered his world. And what he did next would change both their lives forever. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe our channel Kindness Talks for more real-life inspired emotional stories. The airport was bustling, just as it always was. Business people zipped past with briefcases, tourists giggled in groups, and announcements echoed above them all. Jonathan Blake, the 42-year-old CEO of a global tech empire, stood near the first-class lounge, adjusting the cuffs on his tailored suit. He had just closed a $300 million merger in Tokyo and was now en route to San Francisco for another board meeting. He thrived on schedules, deadlines, and results. But that day, his routine cracked. As he sipped his espresso and checked his watch for the third time, he noticed something strange, a quiet stillness amid chaos. His eyes were drawn to a small corner near gate 17, where a little girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, sat alone on the floor, her back resting against a column. She wore a faded pink dress that looked a size too small and clutched a worn-out teddy bear with one eye missing. Her feet were bare, her hair tangled. She looked utterly lost. Jonathan frowned. He waited for someone, anyone, to approach her. Surely, her parents were nearby. A nanny, maybe. But 5 minutes passed. Then 10. She didn't move, didn't cry, didn't speak. Just sat there with a kind of heartbreaking stillness that no child should ever know. Against all instinct, Jonathan walked over. "Hey there," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "Are you waiting for someone?" The girl looked up, startled, her big brown eyes filled with silent fear. She didn't reply. "My name is Jonathan," he offered, softening his voice. "Where's your mom or dad?" A whisper escaped her lips. "Gone." The word struck him harder than it should have. He swallowed. "What do you mean? Did they go to the restroom? Or?" She shook her head. "They left. At the last airport. Said I was too much trouble." Jonathan's chest tightened. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A child, abandoned at an airport? "Do you know your name?" he asked gently. "Lila," she said, barely audible. "I think. I'm not sure." He sat down beside her on the cold tile, ignoring the curious stares of passers-by. "Well, Lila, you're not alone anymore. Okay?" She didn't reply. Just held her teddy tighter. Security arrived minutes later, called by a concerned traveler. Jonathan explained the situation. They took Lila to a small airport office while Child Protective Services were notified. He gave them his business card, not as a CEO, but as a man who had just seen a part of himself in a lonely little girl. Because years ago, he too had sat on a cold floor, waiting for parents who never came back. That night, in a 5-star hotel room far from gate 17, Jonathan couldn't sleep. Lila's quiet eyes haunted him. He remembered his own foster homes. The cruel nights. The birthdays no one remembered. The feeling of being forgotten by the world. No matter how wealthy or powerful he became, that emptiness never left. And now, he'd seen it in her. The next morning, he canceled all meetings. Flew back to the city where Lila had been transferred. Waited outside the child welfare office like an anxious father. When they brought her out, she blinked in confusion. "You came back," she whispered. He knelt down. "Yeah. I told you, you're not alone anymore." Jonathan Blake wasn't impulsive. His empire was built on careful strategy and precision. But when he filed emergency guardianship papers for Lila, his board members thought he'd gone mad. "You don't even know the child," his legal counsel protested. "She's not your responsibility." But Jonathan disagreed. Not with words, but with action. He rented a quiet townhouse outside the city. Brought in therapists. Enrolled Lila in a small private school with kind teachers. At first, she barely spoke. Her eyes avoided his. She'd flinch at sudden sounds. But Jonathan didn't push. He read her bedtime stories even when she didn't respond. He packed her lunches with handwritten notes inside. "You are brave. You are not forgotten. You are loved." And slowly, so slowly, she began to trust him. One night, she left her teddy on the floor and crawled into his lap. "Can you be my dad?" Tears welled in his eyes. He nodded, unable to speak. Months passed. Lila laughed now. She painted silly pictures. She asked questions about the stars and wore glittery shoes. And Jonathan, once the cold, mechanical CEO, had become someone else entirely. He started taking mornings off to walk her to school. Turned down speaking engagements to attend her dance recitals. The world he'd once ruled no longer fascinated him the way her smile did. But just when life began to heal, the past came knocking. A woman claiming to be Lila's mother showed up with a lawyer, saying she had rights. Said she made a mistake and wanted her daughter back. Child Services reopened the case. Jonathan felt like the ground had been ripped from under him. Lila cried for nights. "She left me. Why does she want me now?" He held her close. "You are not a mistake. Not anymore." They fought in court. It was ugly. The mother's legal team accused Jonathan of using his wealth to collect a child like a prize. But his lawyer did something unexpected. She asked the judge to hear Lila's voice. On the final day of trial, the little girl stood before the courtroom, clutching her teddy. "He didn't buy me," she said clearly. "He stayed. When no one else did. He reads me stories and makes me laugh. He's my dad, even if we don't match." Silence filled the room. The judge looked at Jonathan. Then at Lila. And finally ruled in favor of permanent custody. Outside the courthouse, Lila looked up at him. "We won?" He smiled. "We did. But not just the case. We found each other." Years later, Lila, now 18, walked across a graduation stage. Jonathan watched from the front row, eyes damp with pride. She was giving the valedictorian speech. "My father found me at an airport," she began, voice steady. "But I think we were both lost back then. And in each other, we found home." This isn't just a story about a millionaire or a lost girl. It's about second chances, unexpected families, and the power of choosing love over logic. Sometimes, the smallest, loneliest moment, like seeing a barefoot child at an airport, can unravel a life's worth of plans and rebuild something even better. Because love, not blood, makes a parent. And sometimes, the family we find is greater than the one we're born into.